Ace valve repair kits.
This is the -F repair kit, which is for the fluid section of the ACE valve. I'm demonstrating on the ACE 8 series, but the process is similar for all sizes of ACE valves.
If you've watched the video on the -S for the external seals, this process is the same here. Those seals come included in the F kit. Start with a 3/32 Allen wrench. Loosen these retaining screws. These screws, there's sometimes tension on it, so if you push these together, a lot of times you can get the screws to fall out pretty easily. So this is the cartridge, and this is the cylinder, so kind of pushing them together. In between there is one O-ring here. It's essentially a cushion, so when they go together, things don't wobble. It gives it a nice tight fit. Sometimes you have to squeeze it just a little bit to get the screws in. But this O-ring doesn't do it, is not a seal for this, it's just more of a cushion. So you can take that off. After the top and bottom are separated, it's helpful to use a bench vise for this kind of work. The next thing we need to do is pull the retainer screw out of the bottom. So I'll clamp it in so I can get a wrench on that easy. Now that's going to allow us access to install the tool, the fixture.
This tool is separately purchased in our CSTK1 kit.
The cartridge needs to fit into the bottom. The screw that goes into this end is going to bottom out. It goes into the bottom hole and it needs to hit the pin that's in there. So when the cartridge is in, bring this screw in by hand. You want it to just be touching, seated, and then this screw is brought in. There's a internal spring, so what this tool does is it compresses the spring so that you can remove the small set screws in this cap. That wrench comes with the kit. It's a pretty small wrench, so not everyone has that one. Once you have it slightly compressed, find those screw holes and you can loosen those screws and remove them. There's one on each side of these smaller ACE valves, the ACE 8. If you have an ACE 10, there's going to be 4 of these set screws. You may need to loosen the fixture slightly so you can get the other side. You just put a little bit of preload on it. It allows the screws to come out. And then as you loosen the vise, this cap should be free. So the spring inside is going to push it all the way out. So that cap you're going to reuse. There's a new spring provided with the kit. The pin that's inside is called the poppet. And that time you see it was seated in there pretty good, but that can pull out through the bottom. Need a little help getting a grip on it, but that will pull out the bottom. So this is the poppet or poppet stem. The head on this end is what seats in here. The piece that's in there is actually called the seat. So these two are very critical to keep together, and you don't want to lose it, don't want to damage it. Now we're ready to take this piece apart. So now we've got the stem removed. We need to separate these two. You can do this with a couple of wrenches, but if you have a vise, that's a handy way to hold it. Clamp this cartridge back in the vise so I can put a wrench on the top half. We've got a 13/16 wrench to turn this insert. Beautiful. And that pulls out. This has one O-ring and one white backup washer behind it, similar to the outside, a little bit bigger size, that go into this outer body here. So now we're ready to take out the seals and replace them. The repair kit -F come with the drawing again. So as we look at what parts come with it, you'll notice we provide the 2 small set screws, partially just because they're easy to lose track of, so we want to make sure you still have those. We have internal seals, we have O-rings. This screw and this larger set screw and this screw are provided as tools, and I'll show you what those are for in a minute. So you can see the spring, we give you a new spring. So we'll set that aside. I'm going to put the seat retainer that came out of the bottom, I'm going to put that back in frame here. I'll set aside these 2 small screws. Okay, so the reason we give you this screw is because we can use it to remove the orange seal that's on the inside. You just turn it, kind of work it in, turn it into the seal, give it a few turns, and then that screw holds on to the seal and it wiggles right out. So you're basically done with these. The old seal and the screw you won't need anymore. If you get the CSTK kit, it comes with the pick tool. This can be handy for getting there's the black plastic washer behind the orange seal. If you have a small screwdriver or a different style of pick that you can use to pull that out, that will work. So that comes behind the orange seal. Those 2 pieces, we give you new ones. Now you want to just look the parts over, make sure everything's in good condition. The inside is ready to go for the new seals. I'll take off the outer seals. This O-ring and this white backup ring. So in the kit there are 2 different sizes. You want to find the white ring that's slightly larger. Put that on first. And then there are 2 smaller O-rings. One slightly smaller is for the outside, slightly larger is for the inside right here. Reinstall that. We can put the seals on the inside here. If you get it crooked, it can be a little tricky to put on. It is a good idea before you install the new seals to put a little grease in there. So that's in place. And then the orange seal, you want the wide side and this O-ring to be showing when you're done installing it. So you start with the narrow end, slide that in. And to install the new seal, you may need something to push with. The head on this screw that we provide is a pretty good diameter. If you can just get enough force on that, it'll pop the new seal in place. So I had to press pretty hard, but that pops in and it's ready to go. Again, you want to take and lubricate the seals on the outside of this before it goes back into this cartridge. Make sure that's clean, no dirt, no metal shavings. Have some decent amount of grease on this. Slide it back in. With these white backup rings, you again want to make sure it's nice and round and it's in the groove. You may need to just wiggle it a little bit to get those to slide together. And then you start the threads. I'm going to go back to the vise to get that tight. Make sure that's nice and tight. So next we would put the stem back into the center. It is a tight fit with the seals. Sometimes have to push a little bit hard to get it going. So if you take a hard surface and press this, you can get it to pop in place. And the stem is in, it starts to come out this side. You need to make sure, you need to push it in just a little bit further. So just whatever, if you've got a screw you can push that in with. So you don't want to put the retainer in yet. First we have to put the cap on this end. So that's where the fixture that's available comes in handy. Just the same way we disassembled it, put it back in. This screw goes in to hold the stem while you do the work on this end. If you don't have this fixture, the other way you can do it is to take the set screw that's provided, thread it in until it holds that stem in place. And this would be the same to disassemble. If you don't have the fixture, at the beginning, when you remove the retaining collar, right away you can put this screw back in. You don't go tight with it, you just want it to bottom out so it's just touching and holding this stem, so you can see the stem isn't going anywhere, but you're not cranking tight on it. That has to stay in place so that when we put the spring on, we can compress the spring with this cap. You don't want that to move. You want to be able to get this cap on and get the screws in, so that has to be nice and solid. Again, you can use the fixture, or you can put this screw in. I'll show you the way we would do this with a vise. This vise would not be the kind I would use. I would use a threaded vise, so that when you put the spring on and the collar or the cap back on, you would put it in the vise like that, and you'd real carefully make sure that that's straight and it's not going to pop out, and then you would tighten your vise. Carefully make sure that that lines back up with the pin as it comes together. But we recommend using the fixture. Just make sure your poppet stem is all the way in. Cartridge goes back in the fixture. You want to make sure this screw is just touching. You want to load this spring up good with grease. Load up this pocket. Keeps all the internal parts well lubricated. It's especially important if you're using the ACE valves on a system with a moisture cure adhesive or a product like that where you need the grease acts as a vapor barrier, so none of the moisture in the air can get back and forth to the seals. That keeps it a sealed system and prevents anything from setting up before you would want it to. So with the fixture, you can use the screw to put the stem back on to the poppet and put the cap on the poppet stem. Now if you go down all the way, it will bottom out. You want to back up just a little on the stem. I'll show you one more time. There's a groove on the stem for the set screws. If you look close at that, have to hold below the head of this stem. The screws need to land in that groove. So this cap needs to be all the way in place so the screws can land in the groove. And then when it's in the fixture, you tighten it down. If it doesn't line up perfectly, you may need to wiggle it just to make sure it lines up and slides over the stem. Come down till it's just bottomed out. Back off maybe 1/8 of a turn. And then you would install the small set screws. Strongly recommend using a thread locker. What we use is the blue medium strength thread locker. You want that because it will hold the screw in place, but it's removable, so the next time you need to do a repair, just a dab of blue Loctite on these screws. If these screws come loose, then the cartridge valve starts to come apart, and if that happens, your ACE valve quits working. It stays open, and you'll be wondering what went wrong. Get the next screw ready. And make sure that's still in the right spot. A little dot of blue. So as you loosen that up, just make sure they're both tight. Wipe off any extra Loctite you got on there. So when this retainer is back on, screws are tight, the last step is to put this collar back in, and then the external seals can be replaced. So it's also a good idea to use just a dot of Loctite on this retainer. The retainer makes sure that the seat never comes out tight. You don't need to reef on it, but you want to make sure that it's all the way in, so that should not be sticking out at all. It should be flat or slightly inside. Now this cartridge is rebuilt. The last steps are what's on the outside. This O-ring and these 3 pieces, you can refer to the repair kit for the Dash S, which is the external seal kit. Gives you these pieces. And when you're ready to put it back together, these are the external seals that go on this end. In the repair kit is one more. It's a little bit smaller. This is the one that was on the top. Essentially a cushion, just makes it a nice tight fit when these two are put together. Slide the cartridge back into the air cylinder. Put the set screws back in. You might need to just put a little bit of pressure on here to get the screws to drop into the groove. That's free to spin. Allen wrench to tighten these shoulder screws back up. And once those are tight, your fluid section repair kit is all complete.
We also have videos that go over the installation of other types of ACE valve repair kits. If you have any questions or need to purchase a repair kit, give us a call.